completely wrong intro. This is, in fact, IPSA kind of magic. I don't know what was going on there. I apologize to one and all, but welcome to IPSA kind of magic, the show that is focused on the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents. And our focus is very much on what is searching, who is doing it, and why is it done in certain ways. When one search can become two, what's that all about, Hamish?
Well, it's something we've highlighted to a certain extent previously, and has been happening and rolling through in the background since I was trying to figure out whether it's 2016 or 2018 when the big rollout started. When we speak about local authority searches, there has been an assumption from people that basically it is one particular, if you like, one particular document, but in reality it's two documents.
Right.
Local authority search is split into two parts. There's one part is called the local land charges, which is basically that is information which relates to the property. Is it in a conservation area? Any planning permissions that have been given with conditions attached to them, have those conditions yet been met, or still do they need to? Is there something financial, some financial lay against this sort of property? The various things you can and can't do. You may not be able to sort of do certain things with the property. For example, it may be a listed building. All of these different kinds of things, they're vitally important, and they're comprising part of what we call the material information. Now, anybody involved with any of our members, any of the members of IPSA are very, very familiar with this, because our working relationship with the local councils has always been with the land charges officer. And we are very, very fortunate that a couple of our ex-land charges operators, in fact, three at the moment, four of them, they did actually work in land charges offices. So there's certain details we can just sort of find out from them. And whilst we, within the search industry, do not have what we call a sort of any recognizable professional development, the CPD, continuous professional development, we do in fact incorporate it in terms of what we do with our members, with our different sort of types of meetings that we have. So we're constantly updating, we're constantly making people aware. We can share amongst each other what the limitations are, what changes are going through. And we just recently speaking about the big challenges with unitary authorities, what was happening there when one authority or two authorities or three authorities became one. But we're speaking about the opposite way around. So whereas some of these councils are combining together to make life a little bit more complicated in that respect, we can still we can still work on it seamlessly, because we're working at a local level. We can understand it, we know about it, we get advanced information on the fact. Now, much is the same to do with the land charges officers. Although they're still responsible for maintaining records, a very big challenge. I do feel for them, because basically those land charges officers are still responsible for maintaining those records. However, they are not providing either the public, the solicitors, us people operating as search agents, researchers, they're not providing that information directly to us. It's provided by a third party. So effectively, land registry have become a reseller. So any income, bearing in mind that it's the taxpayers' money that's gone into, because they maintain land registry.
Of course it is.
So it's the taxpayers' money that's gone into this, by and large. However, the land registry themselves are they're generating a further income as a consequence of doing this particular sort of work. There's a small element of compensation, but once it's done, it's done. And that land charges office now, if you like, they're no longer able to charge money for this particular sort of process. So they've lost an income stream. And as we know, councils are stripped already with the various sort of situation they find themselves in, things they were not expecting to be able to sort of maintain. We won't go into that because it's a big political argument there. But they're having to pay a significant amount of money out that they would not have expected in their budgets, which does not help in these particular sort of these times anyway, when all sorts of prices are going up.
It seems to be extra pressure. I'm just thinking the benefit came from collapsing all these authorities into one body. Allegedly. And but the downside appears to be you're expecting more people, pun intended, to wear more hats.
Well, fewer people in a way. This is the sad thing.
Fewer people wear more hats. Yeah, there we go.
Right. And previously, I mean, what you did have, when you actually spoke to the land charge, if there was a query or anything like that, you could just go back to the land charge and say, oh, by the way, this is because we were speaking to them all the time. We had a good working relationship. Now that's no longer the case. So our work very rarely goes directly through the land charges office. So it's changed our relationship. Now, fortunately, of course, we do still know very much how the councils operate. So it's very easy for our researchers, our agents that are out there in the field, they can still make contact with those land charges officers who happen to still be there.
Right.
In many cases, of course, we've lost the experts. We've lost that expertise as a consequence of the unitary side of things, as a consequence of councils cutting back, because the council's been cutting back even without going unitary. And one of the councils that we do an awful lot of work with, particularly, that relationship is completely gone. We don't, but nobody told us. It just, the land charges office has disappeared, and another department now looks after the work, but there are some positive sides to land registry looking after it.
Really? Go on, do tell me. I've not heard any so far.
Well, but what I want to do, it's split it. So whereas previously a solicitor, a conveyancer, when they wanted to obtain local search information, they went to one source for that particular information. Now, what they've got now, it's split into two. So they have got to ask land registry for anything to do with land charges. So there's a separate side, which is land charges. And then they need to go to the other direction to actually sort of get the stuff from the local council, because the local council still provides an enormous amount of important information. And they still maintain those land charges records. But what it is, it's split. Now, the big challenge is land charges officers, on the whole, were the experts with land charges. Land registry weren't. So there can be situations, although initially we had nightmares all over the place, we've now got a situation, it is much smoother. But I mean, in particular, we're going through locally to us, Swindon Council, they are about to switch to land registry. Now, we stopped all searches. They haven't been doing any searches for us. We haven't been able to do any work for any of our clients at all since sometime in March. I can't remember when it was, 19th of March or something like that. And basically, it's almost a month, really, because we won't be able to actually speak to them until after Easter, the week beyond Easter, I think it actually is. And then we can actually start getting information. So it has slowed things down temporarily. Now, in reality, Swindon they were quite good performers. We could get the information from them in 2 to 3 weeks anyway. And 3 weeks is an outlandish period of time to wait when we look at some of the challenges that are going on. The big challenge we have with Swindon is their land charges. It is worse now than it used to be in the 1990s. It is absolutely appalling. We get the land charges instantly, or we will, which it's going to take. It will take longer to work through the the building regulation fiasco that they've created. Can you imagine looking at through every month since the beginning of this century to try and find out whether there's some building regulations on the property or not? It's that daft in this day and age of when we're actually sort of meant to be doing. But anyway, that aside, the positive gain is we get the information instantly. It can save us weeks of waiting.
Right.
Unfortunately, they haven't started with the worst councils first. The worst councils mind you, there's only a couple of handfuls of those, but they didn't start with the worst first, which would have been a good idea to bring all of those down. But what it does actually mean, we don't have to travel. But we did have to drive to all of these different councils.
Yeah, I remember that you used to often sit in rooms, not allowed to cross lines, waiting for info to give you. You have to take photographs of things, and yes, the whole kit and caboodle.
Oh yeah, lovely stories, particularly when we go back to the 1990s, and even before that with Val, when she used to go out with her father and with her typewriter in the car. I loved that. But the thing is, we made great friends with many of the land charges officers, so it was a lot easier to resolve things. Very friendly, a much friendlier kind of atmosphere than we have now. But society is a little bit like that. I think that the lockdown didn't really help us in that respect. But sadly, we've lost a fair bit of communication, which is a sad thing because humans do need that.
But I think that when you've got a time of great isolation, we were forced to isolate both from each other and from community as a whole. And I think that just the same way as if you institutionalize a person by showing them in a solitary in a cell for a number of years, when they come out, it could take them years to get back to the point where they're gregarious again. And I think we are in the time of what I refer to as natural cynicism. So nobody takes anything at face value. Everybody thinks that everybody else is out to in some way make their lives difficult, and this is no different. I think we're being paid back for perhaps those missteps during lockdown, which meant that we are taking our time as a society. And this is reflected by this as well, by the very topics you're talking about. It's taken them a while just to find their feet. And on top of that, they're becoming unitaries, which means you're getting less people, as you said, having to take on more hats. And possibly, and I'm not, please, anybody listening to this, don't come at me in the comments. Perhaps people without as much skill in those areas. And this is the problem. It's I feel sorry for the people left, frankly.
I think he's put a lot more pressure on them, Gareth. You're quite right. And I think there was pressure enough. One speaks an awful lot of the time about the struggles that conveyancers actually sort of go through. In fact, many people within the whole of that conveyancing transaction. But there was a lot of pressure put on land charges officers, particularly around a great flurry and a constant sort of change of what was happening. You know, stamp duties changes sort of here and there. All of a sudden there'll be massive great lows and people screaming at land charges officers, get this out, get this out. Now, in some respects, none of that's been subdued because we've still got the idiocy of the land tax, which they don't seem to be able to. I mean, this government's not going to reduce anything like that. It can't afford to. We're in such a bad way.
Yeah.
More than they can afford to actually, like in many other countries throughout the world, because of the increase in fuel, a lot of people reduce taxation.
Right.
And in fact, they've given him free transport in certain parts. I think in Australia, I think the buses are free and things like that. I mean, in this country, they can't afford to do anything.
I think they've become they're cash strapped because of this business, this current this ridiculous craziness around various wars that we've found ourselves embroiled in one way or the other, that have then caused various other prices to raise. We've got less people available in particular councils to service requirements from searches and others. It's a perfect storm in a way.
It's one of the thing, the sad aspect too, what it does do, the more, whether they happen to be conveyancers, whether they happen to be uh, solicitors particularly, the more pressure they're under, the less creative they can be, and the less insightful they can be within the work which they're trying to do. And if they're trying to spend time on getting to the bottom of it, there's very little gratitude shown often by the clients out there, because the clients, I just want to move. I just want to move.
Well, I can see them. They've got their pressures. The likelihood of deals falling through and all being consumed is still very high. People don't feel, as a whole, forgive me for talking for people out there, but people don't feel as a whole that they've got anything they can rely on.
I think this is one of the challenges. One of the aspects that we do have, which is great news for anybody out there who's relying on local searches from, if you like, local providers. Now, I'm not a personal provider for Newcastle, a search in Newcastle, but I know somebody who is.
And let me champion that. Let me champion that for a moment, Hamish. As a person who has literally no axe to grind in this matter, one benefit that, in my mind, trumps pretty much all others in IPSA is that it's a collaborative. It's a cooperative. All the members of IPSA, they hand off to each other if there's someone better suited to do that search because of the geographical area that they're in. Each area, I mean, Hamish is Bicester and a couple of areas of that ilk, but you could be. I'm thinking. I don't know the different areas, but if you were with a different one, Barty or any of the others, they had their own specialist areas. They've usually developed many years of relationships with land charges, with council as a whole in that area. They know where the bodies are buried. They know where to dig for skeletons, and they'll be able to give you the right information that you actually need. I think this is the killing stroke as far as IPSA is concerned. IPSA will literally find the right information built on strong relationships. I mean, Hamish, I'm always banging that drum. It's true, isn't it, though?
Oh, very much so. Now, I think this is the advantage too when we look at the situation. As there are advantages, we're beginning to see the gain now of land registry handling these things, because we know the source. We can actually work with that particular sort of source, right. But we can also refine the information. Land registry themselves can't fully refine the data which is being sent to them from the councils, because they don't, in fairness to them, they aren't land charges officers. They are basically resellers of the land charges information. Right. So they're not necessarily expected to know, but they've refined the way in which they are collating the information now. They've learned a lot because of the feedback which is given from people like us who have been out there on the ground, and we've been able to speak to them. They can only refine it so far. What it does rely on is basically the person with the local knowledge. They'll go into it. And I mean, for example, I'm nowhere near Bristol. It's a long drive for me, Bristol, these days, because we're not going out to all of the councils sort of on the way.
Right.
Gemma, who sat out there in Bristol, basically she knows Bristol inside out. And when Bristol went over the land registry, we got some comparisons and things going. And she did say, actually said, well, I really feel if I didn't know Bristol myself, it would have been a challenge. She said, but because I'm used to Bristol, there is no problem in refining the information that is sent back. Because there's duplications here and there. There's odd bits and pieces which you think, oh, that's a bit of a query. So you want to find out what the true answer is. But we know the contacts. IPSA members know the contacts, that they can go out there, they can get that information refined and put it together so it becomes one single search instead of those two parts. So the two are really, if you're working with an independent search provider, those two become one again. And it's no worries that I mean, we get updates on which councils are moving through. As I said, we got the information that Swindon will be moving forward, and Land Registry are very, very good at explaining when these things are going to happen.
It's because IPSA members as a whole have their ears to the ground. You're not just doing it as a mechanical process. You're actually using some level of knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom, dare I say it. Thank you so much, Hamish McClay, for helping set it up. Guys, if you're watching this, thank you so much. I see bunches of people coming in and out. Thank you for taking your time out today. This has been the IPSA show, the IPSA Kind of Magic show, where we talk about all things independent personal search, specifically the independent personal search agents, the association thereof that Hamish currently chairs. Bear in mind, you don't worry. You've got at least 2 more really cool shows coming up. So tomorrow morning we have Property Quorum, which is an excellent show where we'll be talking about all different aspects of what's going on. We usually have 3 or 4 experts on there. We're banding around ideas, and I'll try and keep the peace. Now, on Friday, unfortunately, we're not having Cladding Matters, but I will be putting out there an old show with some music attached to it, so please do watch out for that. It should be good fun. And we'll see you again properly next Tuesday. So until then, to all of you in the UK, have a lovely bank holiday Friday. And remember, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after your mental health. Until next time, bye-bye.
Local skill with national connection. Independent, but never alone. IPSA, where your professional home.